This is the Momentum Podcast. Central nervous system regulation is one of the biggest success hacks we can have as a visionary entrepreneur, really as a human being. But if you're a visionary and you're running a team, you're working with your operator, you have customers, you have a business that you're growing, if you can regulate your central nervous system and be more present, more aware, more grounded, and in your body, you will make better decisions. You'll see a brighter future and you'll create way more momentum. For years, I've suggested that visionaries meditate. And today, I actually suggest that visionaries stop meditating and use an entirely different process altogether that actually works and creates incredible amounts of central nervous system regulation. I'm excited to share this with you. I'm Alex Sharfin, and this is the Momentum Podcast, made for empire builders, game changers, trailblazers, shot takers, record breakers, world makers, and creators of all kinds. Those among us who can't turn it off and don't know why anyone would want to. We challenge complacency, destroy apathy, and we are obsessed with creating momentum so we can roll over bureaucracy and make our greatest contribution. Sure, we pay attention to their rules, but only so that we can bend them, break them, then rewrite them around our own will. We don't accept our destiny, we define it. We don't understand defeat because you only lose if you stop, and we don't know how. While the rest of the world strives for average and clings desperately to the status quo, we are the minority, the few, who are willing to hallucinate there could be a better future, and instead of just daydreaming of what could be, we endure the vulnerability and exposure it takes to make it real. We are the evolutionary hunters, clearly the most important people in the world, because entrepreneurs are the only source of consistent, positive human evolution, and we always will be. If you've listened to this podcast for a while, you're probably surprised to see the title that says, Stop Meditating and Do This. Now, here's the reason that I'm sharing this with you. For years, I think it's probably been over 10 years, I've been encouraging entrepreneurs to meditate. I've encouraged the Muse headset. I've encouraged audio meditations. I've encouraged doing 2 or 3 minute meditations. And I think that there's just a challenge with the word meditation and the connotations it brings up. I think really the biggest challenge, and now I'm going back to when I first learned how to meditate, I was committed to meditation. I wanted central nervous system regulation. I know that I can get dysregulated. I know that my central nervous system is often on alert. I know that I can go into a parasympathetic nervous system response and go into fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, actually not that difficultly. It doesn't take a lot to get me there. As a visionary, as somebody who's been through a lot of conflict, through a lot of challenges, through a lot of stuff in my life. And so I look at self-care and meditation and the things that I do as putting gas in the tank so that I'm not as triggerable, so that I'm not as reactive, so that I'm more present and I'm more aware. And it's like a bank account. Every time I do anything for myself that assists with central nervous system regulation, and that includes taking a mile walk in the morning, going through my morning routine, daily planning, daily alignment with my wife, hydrating, eating the right foods, exercising, and not meditation, but what I now call time in neutral. Let me share with you where this comes from. Months ago, I was listening to a podcast with Joe Rogan and Naval Ravikant. And if you've never heard of it, even if you don't like Joe Rogan, I personally do. He lives right around the corner from us. I think he's pretty incredible for what one evolutionary hunter can do. Here's a guy who has more listenership and more popularity than all of the major news broadcasts combined. One guy literally was in his garage with friends and is now getting more attention than all of those organizations and the team and the staff that they have. So he's doing something extraordinary. And in the podcast with Naval, which was so incredible and so dense and so many great takeaways, Naval talked about what he does for what he calls meditation. And he said he just sits down and takes a period of time. I personally use 20 minutes. And he just sits there with no expectations, and whatever comes up in his mind, he allows it to process and move through, and he just does that on a daily basis. And the reason I think this is so profound in its explanation is when I was starting to meditate, I would ask people what meditation was, and they would make the explanation sound so complicated and so confusing. I always thought I was doing it wrong. In fact, in retrospect, when I look back at when I was learning how to meditate, I think a lot of the anxiety around doing it wrong was why I had such trouble with it. It was why I felt like I wasn't in the right or doing it the right way. And I was reactive while I was doing it. Heck, I would sit down to meditate, go about 2 minutes. My mind would go crazy. And then I'd be like, I'm doing it wrong. I'm failing. I'm going to get out of here. And meditation, which was supposed to be calming and regulate my central nervous system, did the exact opposite. So if you've had this experience, I want you to know you are not alone. It's happened to so many of us, and it's definitely happened to me. So here's how I've changed things, and here's how I've changed my perception. And Naval was a huge influence on this. Also, recently, Katie and I were working with a shaman, a coach here in Austin, and we went through a ceremony that actually had quite a bit of intensity for me, and I was working through some trauma and some other things. And at the end of the ceremony, the shaman asked me, how are you feeling? And I felt kind of neutral. I didn't feel like I was high. I didn't feel like I was low. I just felt neutral. I felt okay. I just felt present. I felt neutral. And he said, that's fantastic. Tell me what neutral feels like. And I said, I feel like I'm here. I feel like I'm grounded. I feel like I'm present, like I'm seeing everything, like I'm in my body. It feels good. And he said, great. Here's my suggestion for you. Spend 20 minutes in neutral every day. And as soon as he said 20 minutes in neutral, it triggered that conversation with Joe Rogan and Naval. And I'm like, hey, that's what he was talking about. It's really 20 minutes in neutral. And so I started doing this practice every single day. Here's what I do. Typically it's after a workout or something else. I go up to my room, or I go down to our theater room, which is pretty soundproof and quiet. I lay down on the floor, I put a blanket over me. I usually put a bolster under my knees so that I'm really comfortable, cross my hands over my chest and set a timer for 20 minutes. I put on an eye mask and I just lay there. And sometimes a lot of stuff comes up. Sometimes my mind starts processing. And as soon as it starts processing, I'm like, right on. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. I'm gonna let whatever needs to come up. I'm just gonna let it appear. I'm gonna let it process, let it move through. And sometimes the stuff that processes and moves through is really important, and I'll jump up when the timer goes off and I'll go write it down. And sometimes stuff just comes up and moves through and it's not that important, and I let that happen too. But here's what's happened over time. Now, not all the time, but maybe 1 out of 3 or 2 out of 3 times, when I lay down to do 20 minutes in neutral, it used to feel like forever. Just to tell you, give you a little bit of foreshadowing. Meditation, neutral, it just used to feel like it took forever. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've done it in so many different ways. But now, here's what happens. Sometimes I lay down and my mind will start processing. I'll take a couple deep breaths, and then the alarm goes off. And I've been there for 20 minutes. And it feels like I was there for a minute. And I realize I wasn't asleep. I wasn't processing. I was in a state of neutral. I was actually in a meditative state. I was in a calming central nervous system connecting state. I was in a place where I was actually offloading and processing, and then it just didn't have anything left to process. And I feel incredible when I get up out of it. In fact, I just did it maybe 15, 20 minutes ago, came down, recorded another episode of the podcast. Now I'm recording this one, and I feel great. I feel grounded. I feel present. I feel aware. I feel like I'm in momentum. It's so interesting how the stillness and quiet of spending 20 minutes in neutral will create momentum for us. As visionaries, we are hard-driving individuals. As visionaries, our minds are almost always going. As visionaries, we are always pressing and moving forward and doing something, and there's always something processing. When we give our minds some time off, when we give our consciousness some time off and we put ourselves in neutral, it's amazing how much more capacity it creates. And here's the best part of being in neutral for 20 minutes. You can't do it wrong unless you stop. My only suggestion is set the timer for 20 minutes and don't look at your phone. It might feel like a long time at the beginning, but just have the discipline to let yourself get all the way through the 20 minutes. And here's what I know will happen, because I've been sharing this with people since I started doing it. And this is the feedback I've gotten. Alex, the first time was so long. And the second time was so long. And the third time felt even longer. And then the fourth time kind of felt different. And then by the second week I was doing it, the 20 minutes wasn't so bad. And by the third week, I really started looking forward to the 20 minutes. And then there was a time on the fourth week where I missed 20 minutes in neutral for a day, and I felt it and I really wanted it. And it's this time where I'm not doing anything, but it feels like so much is moving, changing, and shifting, and I become so much more present, so much more aware, and it just feels like momentum. This is so much easier than trying to quote unquote meditate. Because again, you can't do it wrong unless you stop. You can't do it wrong unless you pull out of the meditation. You pull out of the time in neutral and you stop doing it. And this is one of those things that has been game-changing for me, and I'm an experienced meditator. I'm a really experienced meditator. I've done hundreds, thousands of hours of meditation. Heck, there was a point where I was meditating 3 times a day with the Muse headset and, scoring super high scores on all the meditation stuff. I know how to get my mind into theta waves and how to, do breathing that moves things around and all those things, but this simple practice has been one of the most game-changing for me, one of the most grounding for me to create massive momentum moving forward. And I want you to feel it. So 20 minutes in neutral is simple. Find a quiet place, lay down. You can sit down. I would recommend you lay down, throw maybe a cushion or a bolster under your knees, set a timer for 20 minutes, and do nothing. And whatever happens, just know you're doing it right, you're winning, and you're calming your central nervous system. I am obsessed with calming your central nervous system. I think the reason is I'm one of those people who has a highly triggered, highly reactive central nervous system. I'm 51 years old. When I was an infant in Mexico in 1972, I had an operation shortly after I was born on my abdomen to repair pyloric stenosis. And I now know as an adult that operation was done without anesthesia. So I'm one of those people who has a highly reactive nervous system just showing up. I've always had doctors tell me I carry excessive tone, that my muscles are too tense, that my muscles are too tight, that I'm reactive, that I'm hyperactive, that I have all these issues. But what it really is for most of my life, I've had a triggered and reactive central nervous system. And over the course of the past couple of decades, I've done everything I can to calm it down. I've done everything I can to become more present and more aware, to overcome the triggers that I have from the past, to overcome the crazy white coat syndrome I used to get when I would walk into a doctor's office and my heart rate would go up to literally just below heart attack speeds. I would have my heart beating out of my chest. I'd be sweating. I'd have anxiety. I'd have trouble breathing. And it was all a reaction to what had happened to me when I was younger and what got reinforced throughout my childhood being sick. So many of us have things like this, that if we create process, structure, and routine, if we create habits around calming our central nervous system, things will get infinitely better. I'm happy to report that today I can go to a doctor's office without a panic attack, without having my heart rate go up to heart attack speeds. Still gets triggered a little bit, but it comes back to normal a lot faster than it used to. And I've gone from one of the most reactive central nervous system people that I know to one of the most present and aware and calmed central nervous systems. And I can tell you that making decisions from this place, that interacting with the people around me from this place, that understanding my life and my time with my family and myself and planning from this place has been infinitely more successful than trying to do things from a reactive, triggered, checked out place. 20 minutes in neutral is life-changing. I've got one other hack for you for calming your central nervous system. This will help you with time in neutral. This will help you planning. This will help you be more present. This will help you be more aware. It'll help you make better food choices. It will help you get more done in a day, and it will help you be overall healthier and more connected. One of the things I've obsessed with my whole career is drinking water. It's one of those things that I've thought of for a long time. I actually created a process for us to drink more water that, along with time in neutral, will help you calm your central nervous system. Dehydration is one of the most challenging things for our central nervous system. In fact, When you get dehydrated, it encourages the symptoms of stress and autoimmune disease and adrenal fatigue and chronic fatigue and all kinds of other things come from a lot of functions in the body, but they may be in your body and many bodies triggered by dehydration. In fact, the symptoms of dehydration line up with the symptoms that the top 20 drugs in the United States treat. Symptoms like anxiety and infection and inflammation and pain and frustration and depression, all of those things can be caused by water. And so as you start your 20 minutes in neutral on a daily basis, I would also suggest you go through our 10-day natural thirst challenge. We've had over 10,000 entrepreneurs go through this process, and it is a simple system to help you be fully hydrated and drink more water naturally within 10 days. You can go to getthirstynow.com to check out the 10-day natural thirst challenge. This is a great complement to spending 20 minutes in neutral on a daily basis. Go to getthirstynow.com. Join the 10-day natural thirst challenge, go do 20 minutes in neutral, and then reach out to me. If you make a social media post about this, or if you share it somewhere, or you can even message me through social, I'd love to know that you tried this and that it worked for you like it did for me.